Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Sean, for several episodes, I've been telling the story. It seems to be never ending. The story of my new adaptive van. Is this ever going to happen?
Kind of like all your stories. They're never ending.
Yeah. So part of this saga is that I had to update my address on my driver's license.
Okay.
It has my old address on it. Right. Routine thing, right?
Old as
So
in California or your last Pennsylvania address?
No, my last Pennsylvania address. I have a Pennsylvania license.
Okay.
So I go into the driver's license, and here's a tip, and maybe you do this too, but whenever I go to the DMV, I always get there like 10 or 15 minutes before they open.
Yeah.
So it's a little early, right? You get there at like 7:45. They open at 8. And you're like the number 11 person in there, and it doesn't take forever.
Sure.
So anyway, I go in there, and I had to change my address on my license. So the guy's like, all right, here's the paper, like, temporary license. It'll take like 5 days or whatever, and it'll show up in the mail. All right, cool. Well, so in the meantime, I had a flight.
Oh, no.
I had to go to North Carolina for a couple days.
Uh-huh.
And so I go to the airport, and I had thought ahead. So I had the paper with me.
Uh-huh.
But I also had a license that had a punch in it. Like, he punched it with a little, the thing, it said void on it.
Yeah, a hole punch makes it invalid.
A hole punch, yeah. A hole punch that says void. But I'm like, I wonder, this is going to be a pain in the butt. Like, I'm going to have to tell them about the paper and all this stuff. So I go to the ticket counter, and I hand them my license with my thumb over the little hole to see if they'll notice. And the guy takes it from me and looks at it and like checks me in. I'm like, oh, sweet.
Okay.
No trouble. So then I go to security, right? This is like Transportation Security Administration. And so I hand them my license with my thumb over the thing, right? And hopefully they won't notice. Well, they stick it in the little machine. I'm like, oh, well, whatever. I'm just going to have to show them the little temporary paper, right? The machine read it just fine. It had a hole in it. My license had a hole in it. And so anyway, I went through the whole trip with a hole in my license. Yeah. I have the real one. Now I'm all legit, but I just thought it was funny. I was freaking out a little bit because I forgot.
I would have assumed it won't work. And I've always also assumed the temporary piece of paper wouldn't work either for a flight. But I think you bring up a good point. The Transportation Security Administration for air travel in the United States. Well, I think somebody has said it before. It's a joke. You know, it might seem, who was it? Actually, I can tell you exactly who it was. One of our doctor friends in Australia. I won't say his name just to be kind, but our one and only doctor friend in Australia, probably, who, well, actually we have a couple, but definitely made it a point to say TSA is it's not a real, it doesn't do a whole lot except piss a lot of people off.
Yeah, there's so many times that I fly out of the airport, I go on my departing flight, and I have my toothpaste that is 7.4 ounces instead of like 3.9 or whatever it is, and it makes it on the way there. but then they catch it on the way back.
It's so dependent on who's working that day and what kind of mood they're in. You know, if it's the end of their shift, they probably don't care or whatever. Who knows?
Right. Whether or not you have a hole in your government issued ID, they sometimes don't mind.
I wonder if some of it might be like, I imagine the airline, the ticket counter, you know, they're probably like, well, we know it's you, and that's all they got to worry about. It's proof that it's you and your name. So maybe they think security will take care of it. TSA will deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, apparently not.
Nope, I guess not.
For season 11, we're introducing a segment that we're calling Newsworthy, highlighting stories you may not see in the headline news, but we think you should. Throughout this season, we'll share brief stories that resonate with me and Sean. Sean, is there a headline that stuck out to you recently?
Newsworthy from Instagram. Young man paralyzed from their shoulders down after a spinal cord injury in 2020. Kyle, this is a random profile that somehow I stumbled upon, liked some of his stuff, so I just started following it. But this guy, Travis Gilmore, was injured in 2020, and he has created a platform. He's a bit of an influencer online, sharing how he does things with paralyzed hands. Much of what he shares is how he cooks and bakes, and overall is empowering to me to watch his videos and follow his journey, because on the surface, he has every reason to be bitter, angry, depressed, and in a sense give up on so much of what he thought he would do before his injury and what he would become and so on. Yet he appears to be adjusting to his quote-unquote new normal and finding ways to live beyond his circumstances. And I'm telling you what, I enjoy every time the algorithm shows up a post or a reel or something from Travis. I always take a minute or two and watch them and find it to be empowering. So I'll encourage our listeners to check out more on Travis Gilmore. You can find him on Instagram at Travis Gilmore. Just spell his last name with 2 E's. I'm sure if you just search, you'll find him. But he's also got stuff on YouTube, Facebook, and pretty much all the platforms influencer kids are using these days.
All right, Sean, as we know, adapting to circumstances, it's a big part of living beyond circumstances. And we talk about it a lot on the show, right? So adapting, and how do we adapt in order to move forward in our lives? There's situations every day that we adapt to. And so what are some of those things, and what are some strategies that we use to adapt to the challenges in our lives? I think the most obvious example is assistive devices. And we've talked about it a lot before. You know, a walker, a wheelchair. I use hand controls. Now I started bringing a ramp to friends' houses. You know, I have a ramp that's like 3 feet long, and I can pretty easily, you know, fit it on my chair and bring it around to friends' houses when I go over there. And so that's one of the ways I adapt. And also, you know, just thinking ahead like that, I know where those spots are that I'm going to need a ramp, so I'll bring it with me. And sometimes that relates to like knowing whether or not a restaurant has a step up, right?
Sure.
And you can get into it. I think of an interview that we're going to have pretty soon with a new app called Roll Mobility, who helps identify accessibility of a public place. And so you can think ahead and prepare for the situations and adapt to them. I also think about planning a trip. When you're planning a trip, you try and think of all the stuff that could happen. You book the right hotels, you call for an accessible room, you think of all the little things that could happen along the way. I also think it's really important to have an aspect of knowing that things are going to go wrong and being able to adapt in the moment. I think that's probably kind of obvious, but it's an essential part of having a disability and adapting to whatever comes into our lives.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure a big part of success in this arena, whatever that might look like, is becoming more aware, increasing your awareness of, and being observant and planning ahead. I think you've said that a couple times now. It's not good enough to, we're going to go out for pizza because I love pizza. But if you're going to a new pizza place, you've got to kind of be prepared to either be let down or be turned away or have to wait outside while your pizza's made or go somewhere else. So having these, the backup plan, if you will, or plan B.
Yeah.
What's going to happen if they don't let me on the plane because of my ID? Or what's going to happen if I can't access this restaurant because of the inaccessibility? Having the forethought of how you're going to handle that and what you might do instead is probably good to have tucked away in your back pocket somewhere.
I agree. Yeah, and the expectation that you may need to use the side entrance that goes by the dumpster and through the kitchen, right?
Yeah. Which I think we've all done that. We've been there. One thing, there's something, this prompts a thought for me in that I've noticed myself over the years as my ability to stay upright and walk continues to deteriorate. I think ahead quite often, and I am slow, and I am okay with being slow. It's one thing to move slow because of my ability or disability. It's a whole nother thing when I know I don't need to stand still, but I'm choosing to stand still to contemplate the next 7 steps. Or, if I put my hand here, then my foot can go here. I'm thinking through what's going to be the safest and the best outcome. And I don't know if that adds value, but when we are proactive and intentional about thinking things through a little bit, we probably have a better outcome.
Yeah. And when you get in a situation and you're like, oh, I wish I would have planned ahead, it forces you to think about it for the next time, right? Yeah. And we've all been in those situations. And I think that with disability, it forces you even more to think ahead a little bit.
Yeah, live and learn, right? And one thing I wrote about this in a column not too long ago, but you mentioned planning a trip, and there's a big adjustment I've made in some of my travels when I can. Not always, it's not easy, but it's definitely become a heightened priority for me. I used to want to maximize both my income, so time at work, and my time on vacation or time visiting friends or family. Right. So I would work all day, take a late flight to wherever I want to go, and hang out for 3, 4, 5 days, then take a late flight home just to turn around and go to work the next morning. And I've realized I'm spent on both ends because of how much I want to do. And I think it was Thanksgiving. I just planned a little bit differently. I took the day off on my flight out of town, and that flight out wasn't until 4 or 5 o'clock at night. So I had all day to do what I like to do, such as sleep in, and move at my own pace without waking up at 4 a.m. in a panic to get to the airport, blah, blah, blah. And then same thing home. I took a day off. I flew home that morning, I want to say like 10 or 11, and had that entire afternoon to unpack, do laundry, and kind of reset before I went back to work the next day. And holy cow, I feel like that was eye-opening. I felt rested on both ends. I felt like I was more available to everything and everybody around me. So, of course, that's kind of how I'm planning all my trips when that kind of flexibility allows.
Yeah, I liked a lot because there's such a need to do everything, right? Yep. And to maximize everything, like you said. And maybe when we slow down, it increases the quality a little bit. And even though it could have a perception of decreasing the quantity of what we do, the quality goes up.
And there's a part that, I feel like there was a season of my life where I didn't feel like I could have that flexibility because I needed to make money.
Right.
And there's probably an element of that. And I believe that a lot of listeners, especially when you talk about disability and the expense of a wheelchair van or, new apparatus to take care of life or that of a loved one. So I get it. It's not cheap. But I started to think about, are there other ways I could save that money, such as maybe I cut out Starbucks for a week to help make up for the shortage of 2 or 3 hours at work or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
There are ways to adjust, I believe, without making any one thing so painful that it paralyzes life in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it just takes thinking differently about it. An example of that is the way we're going to modify our production schedule this year.
Yeah, for this show.
Yeah, exactly. We rented a podcast studio in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and we're going to record like 8 interviews in 2 days at the studio. Some of them will be live in person, which will be really incredible, but some of them will also be virtual over Zoom as well. But, just getting all those done to maybe relieve some pressure in a different area down the way in this season.
Which is a perfect example of what we're talking about today. In our last episode, we joked about how every season we get halfway into it and we're just overwhelmed and, burning the candle at both ends or whatever their saying is.
Yeah.
And we both just took a step back and thought, okay, we love what we're doing and we want to keep doing it, but is there a different way of doing it? And we just had to reassess, which maybe is a challenge for listeners. Are there areas of your life where maybe you feel like you keep hitting a brick wall or you keep experiencing disappointment and failure? Maybe there is an opportunity to approach it differently. And we don't know if it's going to work. We're about to find out. But the idea is to do some batch recording, at least a big part of the heavy lift in what we do. We're still going to get together once a week and kind of maintain the podcast itself. But man, if we can record 8, 9, 10 meaty or, the main content of an episode, it's going to help us produce this show in a more manageable manner that we haven't tried yet. So fingers crossed that we're onto something that could be a bit life-changing for us and the show.
Maybe we'll be like, okay, we're never doing that again. Sure. But maybe it will be something good too. And no matter what, we're going to learn from the experience.
Exactly. No matter what. Something will be learned for sure.
Yeah.
That is a valuable principle in everything, every area of life. Even if that venture or that program doesn't work or that relationship fails, you're going to learn something about yourself, something about, oh, maybe if I tweak it here, I can go about building a business this way or whatever it may be. Something to be learned even in those moments of failure.
Sean, thanks for the conversation. It's always good to talk about some practical things that we can think about or maybe even implement to try and take the next step on whatever we're trying to do. So let's move on to thank you notes. Who do you have to thank today?
This episode is going to play after the Super Bowl, which means the NFL season has come to a close. And I know what you're thinking, Kyle. What do you care, Sean? Well, I'm so glad you asked because I'm going to tell you. What I love about football season is the fact that there's a game every other day. You know, what is it? Monday night football, Thursday night football, and Sunday night football?
Sunday.
Or just all day Sunday? Well, can I tell you? The best times for me to go to the gym, they happen to be Monday night, Thursday night, and all day Sunday, naturally because of football. But also, Friday nights and Saturday nights are pretty quiet. So I get 5 quiet times at the gym at maybe not ideal times a day. Like Monday night, I get off work 6 o'clock. That's usually a very busy time at the gym. Unless there's a football game.
There's a game.
And then it's perfect. So me personally, I'm saying thank you to the football season and how big the NFL is to Americans and maybe humans in general. Because I don't care about football, but I love going to the gym when it's quiet. So thank you. Quiet time at the gym due to football.
So in the off season, it really does pick up.
Yeah.
You can notice a difference.
100%.
Yeah.
Like I've posted this online. People have probably seen. I love Super Bowl Sunday because the gym is so quiet. Like that's my favorite day to go to the gym.
All right. Well, my thank you note is going out to my friend Joy. Joy and I recently co-hosted a game day party at my place where we invited all our friends to come play games.
Nice.
We played left, right, center. We played Taboo. You know what? And I think those are the only ones we got to. We're going to have an agenda next time so we can get to more games. But it was so much fun. It was so loud in my place because everyone was just laughing and having a good time. Oh, my gosh. And it was all due to Joy and her planning. Nice. And we fed everybody. Holy cow. Lots of food. Lots of drinks. Our friend Lisa, she used to be a bartender, and so she was tending bar, making drinks for everybody. Oh, it was so fun. That's awesome. My thank you note goes out to Joy for helping me co-host a really fun party. Thank you, Joy.
Nice. Those are the best kind of parties, in my opinion, especially at the age of 40. Like, nothing beats game night.
Yeah. Sure.
Well, of course, thank you for listening today and being a part of the Two Disabled Dudes journey. We encourage you to visit our show notes. You can find those at twodisableddudes.com, where you can find links to some of the things we may have mentioned today. Of course, if you're liking this show, we would love it if you would share it with a friend and subscribe so you never miss an episode. But even more valuable than that is taking a moment or two and writing a review for the show on whatever platform you prefer, whether it's Google Podcast, Google Player, or Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, or wherever you're listening. We're grateful for you, and we're also grateful for those reviews. We look forward to talking at you again next week. Until next time, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to stay connected.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player.